Hello and welcome back to the Reeve and Bloom show. I think that's what we're going to be calling it from here on in. We're still in lockdown. It's still a thing. And this is a great excuse for me and Ben to catch up. Myself, Jack Reeve, Benjamin Bloom, to talk about all things Norwich and Ipswich and a bit of football intertwined. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. Yeah, some difficult. We just chatting before the red light went on. Some difficult decisions coming up now with I'm in education, so um, June the 1st is a bit of a D-Day, and I suppose how it's going to parlay into the football conversation. You're always hoping that someone one stage ahead of you is going to make a decision for
Yeah,
you, but it's just it just doesn't seem to be happening. Seems from a football point of view now that some way is clearing if we don't get a second spike, but you know,
it's really odd, isn't it? Because I think we were all really hoping that there'd be some clarity on Sunday from the people in charge, and actually, it's just kind of muddied the waters even more, which is both annoying from a football perspective, which we're here to talk about today, and also our personal lives. I mean, your job and everyone's job is up in the air. Do you go back? Do you put yourself at risk for the upside of a bit of cash in the pocket? It's like there's so many tough decisions to be made, as you said.
and the only way you're going to get clarity is if the numbers, the horrible numbers, go down consistently whilst we're ramping
Mm.
up. Sorry, I sound like ramping up. Jesus Christ, we're all our vocabulary has totally changed in these last few weeks. So whilst one goes down and one goes up, and we don't get a second, but it needs to do that for a few weeks before
Yeah.
people are like, oh, okay, there's a way out of this. But
And
but
I'm,
we
I'm not sure what it's like with you, but I've certainly noticed. I know that now it's Wednesday, rules have slightly relaxed and everything, but it's been like this for a few weeks, I think. I think people have not been, flouting the rules, but have taken a slightly more relaxed approach. But the thing with life and football, we have to get back up and running at some point. In football terms, if you don't, football clubs go bust, football clubs go missing. And in life, if you don't, then food suddenly becomes tough to put on the table. So, yeah, let's try and get on to slightly lighter.
we're not doing a politics podcast then,
Yeah,
Jack.
well, imagine.
I
I
don't think
did.
you or I are qualified to do that.
I watched your podcast with Kieran Maguire, the football finance expert, and that got slightly political at points, I think.
It did, yeah. Good watch that. Lots of I don't know if did Norwich come up specifically. I mean, Ipswich always comes up, but
Parachute payments did.
oh, with me, what a surprise there. Yeah, so I'm sure we'll get onto all that. But good chat with Kieran, even though your friend of mine, Simon Jordan, took issue with some of the comments on Twitter, but there we go. The fact he even knows who we are is lovely, isn't it? So
I was really intrigued by the fact that he didn't. When you said like, how many clubs do you think in the lower leagues are going to go bust? He seemed quite optimistic about it all, and he basically his justification was, which seemed odd for a man who deals in such numbers, that the community spirit around football clubs are different to other businesses. So they can often be helped by kind of being propped up by fan support, and they'll always kind of be there. Which for a man as clever as him, I was kind of surprised about.
well, he's right about the community spirit and the propping up. It's just that is there, obviously, but I'm sure we'll get into the Norwich announcements, this morning on what are you going to do. And I've had a hilarious letter from Marcus Evans that had my name here and then dear customer here, which it just kind of sums up the communication at the Ipswich. When I was at journalism college, Jack, I had this old school. It's called Nigel, and he smoked 50 Marlboro Reds a day and worked for all of the Red Tops. And he said, "Let me tell you now, if you ever get a letter and your name is spelt wrong, I don't even open the letter. If someone can't be bothered to get my name right, and
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of stuck with me. So when I'm dear customer or whatever it said, but yes, we'll get on to the decisions that that be interested to know what you're going to do. I can tell you what I'm going to do, and yeah,
Should we talk about that now then? I think that's
yeah,
probably a
okay.
good segue. So the government announced there's not going to be any sport even behind closed doors before June the 1st, which basically means that season ticket holders essentially won't be seeing any more football at their respective grounds this season, or the money that they've paid for this season. So Norwich, I don't know, you can talk about Ipswich in a moment, but Norwich have, I think they were probably one of the first, actually, one of the clubs to announce what they're going to be doing with season ticket holders. So I pay for my ticket up front at the start of the season, which is 500 odd quid. It's not cheap. And now, because we've got, I think there's 6 home games, something like that, we're not going to be seeing them, so we're due a refund. So for me, in the Barclays as an adult, it's like 115 quid that I'll be getting back. Families of 4, of course, a lot more. Some people have paid ahead for away tickets, away memberships. Like, it really starts to add up for some people. So Norwich have given us 3 options. 1, take a pro-rated refund. So whatever money you're owed, you get back into your personal bank account. 2 is support the academy. So your money would go direct to Colney and helping the academy teams. And 3 is supporting the Community Sports Foundation, which is Norwich's official charity, which does great work throughout the community. And I've been really interested, actually, seeing the response on Twitter and Facebook. And I know it's tough to take social media opinions as kind of fact, but a lot of people are doing different things. And I don't think there've been too many people getting annoyed about people taking like refunds. But the way I see it, I've paid for a product that I haven't received for all of it. I'm fully entitled to that refund. And I would much rather, I'm going to take it and I'm going to, help, because all jobs are very uncertain at the moment. So that money is going to be very, very helpful in my bank account. But I don't see why people think it's vital, in Norwich's sake, to prop up a stable Premier League football club. Like, I just don't see that as a mind of making you like a better fan. So I'm going to take my refund happily. What's the situation with yours?
Yeah, there's a similar thing. I mean, it's not 100 million quid's worth of broadcast money, but what comes into the argument at Ipswich is, oh, Marcus Evans is loaded,
Yeah.
So it's and again, it comes to this like sort of moral, social thing of, oh, should matey boy down the road with his, I don't know, his garage be allowed to take help from the government?
Yeah.
If I don't know, a much richer person who runs a business, should they get the help and they don't? And it's very difficult, because you don't want to ever, well, I don't want to end up sounding like the extreme view on Twitter, the little man of, oh, any big business is evil and money is evil, and they don't deserve it. It's a bit of a weird situation. I have a season ticket at Portman Road, which is a podcast season ticket. So I cover the season ticket, and if anyone wants to go and sit upstairs in the nice seat in the empty top of the Pioneer, they can do so. So my decision was fairly easy. And I renewed for next season, just kind of on the basis of a little bit of support for the club, and to guarantee the nice seat and to support my podcast guys as well. So, but obviously, if you're in a household where 2 people have been furloughed and you've got 4 season tickets, you need that refund. So I think it's I appreciate what Norwich have done. That sounds really good. Their situation will be different than Ipswich's, which will be different than, maybe Ipswich and Norwich are both spoilt compared to Rochdale or Southend or whatever, where there isn't TV money or a rich, like you say, stable Premier League club. So it's so tricky, Jack. I think
Massively.
I think our clubs have done okay, and I think we'd leave it up to the fans. I think you'd probably agree.
Massively, yeah. I think that there isn't kind of one rule for all, is that everyone knows their personal circumstances better than anyone, and just make the decision based off of what you feel is right. And I think whatever the decision is made, I mean, what you do with your 100 quid left in your season ticket pot isn't really a massive, like an important decision in the grand scheme of things. But it's like you say, there's been so many kind of moral decisions recently. I mean, the furloughing of staff of some Premier League football clubs, Norwich included, was massively criticised, and we saw Spurs and Liverpool reverse theirs. And I heard Stuart Webber talking about the furloughing of Norwich staff this morning, and he said, well, I've been a member of staff at a football club before in a lower paid job. He was at Wrexham and other clubs like that. And he said, for the staff, it's that security, and Norwich is self-funded. it sounds harsh, but I genuinely think that if there was no work for people behind the scenes at football club, they would have just been made redundant if it wasn't for the furlough scheme, because clubs and businesses operate harshly, and if staff members aren't doing work and generating revenue, then they're disposable, and it's as simple as that.
And how can the government offer, we're going to offer the furlough scheme unless your turnover is
Mm.
above X amount? Higher turnover doesn't equate to higher profits, and it certainly doesn't equate to, you, you'd assume the bigger the company, the more money they're losing. I know there's whoever at the post office down the road is right on it.
Yeah,
But yeah, I was kind of the same as you. I'm like, well, you got to offer it. We're in a democracy. You're going to offer it to a post office. You're going to offer it in a garage. You're going to offer it to a football club. So yeah,
yeah,
bit of a tricky one though. I think there was a lot of outrage on that, and I do think it's different for Newcastle and Norwich than it is for Liverpool and Spurs.
yeah. Of course,
They're
it is.
completely different
Yeah,
level organisation, and Norwich as well. I mean, Norwich don't have the revenues that Newcastle draw
no,
probably double the gate receipts, don't
yeah.
they? So
And it's a thing of like, if we knew that this was only going to be a 2 month thing, then I'm sure Norwich would have been like, yeah, we'll cover the wages. But we don't know how long. You can't plan. You can't plan, and that's been the really unsettling thing amongst all of this. Okay, so that's season tickets. What's the current state of play for Ipswich then? Because it's dead confusing. You've got League One and League Two operating on certain guidelines. You've got the Championship, who I saw the Athletic say this morning are the forgotten league amongst all of this.
oh, not
You've
by
got
us, Jack.
you've got the Premier League, who are just going off and doing their own thing as they always do, and then you've got the National Leagues, who clubs like Kings Lynn are very much involved in, also doing another thing. So Ipswich, League One, what's going on?
So we'll probably get completely stitched up by this because they'll probably make the announcement 5 minutes before we jump.
Yeah,
So we've got a meeting today. It's difficult to know how long they're going to take to resolve things. The general thought is that League One and Two are going to be cancelled today or tomorrow. So
yeah,
again, we're recording on Wednesday morning. I think the Premier League one was 4 or 5 hours. Safe to say this one should be a little bit more cut and dried. I'm happy with the EFL kind of fragmenting a little bit because the Championship is a completely different kettle of fish to League One and League Two because of the proximity to the Premier League, because of the parachute payments, because of the cliff edge. You can't, and I have plenty of people comment on my YouTube channel saying, "Oh, it's the EFL," but I'm perfectly happy for that. The general feeling is it's going to be weighted points per game, so home and away taken into account. Not the
yeah.
hilarious suggestion of using the first 23 fixtures, which would give Ipswich the most unfair, ridiculous promotion in the history. Can you imagine they ratified
I
that?
saw
My
some. I
God.
saw some Liverpool fans suggesting that this morning, and
That'd
if
be
you were
the
going with that,
worst promotion in the history of
if,
football, wouldn't it?
if you did that in the Premier League, Liverpool fans were saying like, this is a great idea. It would obviously crown Liverpool as champions. It would also relegate Everton as well.
No way.
Yeah,
But and at least people are now coming out and talking self-interest. Look, I like Lee Bowyer. I think he's a good manager. He's gone on Sky Sports yesterday saying, "Oh well, Charlton have only been in the drop zone for 5 days," and then, of course, oh, I think we should use the 23 game rule. Where would Charlton be then?
Mm.
8 places higher or whatever. So at least, and we've had a couple. I think Scott Duxbury from Watford, and there's one other, the Brighton guy, where they've actually said, yeah, of course there's self-interest. Of
Yeah,
course, I've got a duty to my club. But no, from an Ipswich point of view, obviously as a club with a you know quote cash-rich owner, we're very spoilt in terms of other League One clubs. The cancellation is, I think it's Dulwich Hamlet or someone said that they will survive as a club because of cancelling fixtures, because they don't
okay.
have the revenue. So I'm happy with that. I'm happy with the points per game thing. But again, self-interest. If we'd been fourth and our points per game one way had put us second or whatever, third, So I've
I
got no
suppose,
self-interest.
yeah, I suppose with Ipswich is, as you say, you've got in the grand scheme of things of League One a cash-rich owner, and you're also in a position where promotion isn't a thing and relegation isn't a thing. So, do you think your opinion is slightly skewed in a sense that I'd be happy with points per game because we're not going to get promoted, we're not going to get relegated? If you were seventh or eighth or something, and playoffs could be a thing, would that be different then for
It,
you?
yeah, it possibly is. I can't sit here and say, "Oh, I'm so open-minded." It's not being skewed slightly. Yeah, of course. And who is it in League Two? Someone is gonna. Is it Exeter are gonna swap
Yeah.
with, and they're gonna drop out of And I'm sure we'll talk about Villa with their game in hand,
Mm.
etc. It probably is skewed, but like we said in our opening segment, Jack, you in this world at the moment, you want to be the person who doesn't have the hard decision, don't you?
Yeah.
So, as an Ipswich fan, you're sat in that seat of not having the hard decision of, say, a Norwich who are in a relegation zone who could get out and are going to be not given the chance to do that. So, yeah, if I'm really honest with myself, it's nice to not have to worry about that. Yeah.
For sure. I mean, we started recording at 9:45, and just before we started, Stuart Webber was on Sky Sports News, and he was of the opinion that the season should be finished, whether that's behind closed doors. He said he was open to the idea of neutral venues. He just believes that the season has to be finished, and if it isn't to be finished, then there can't be promotions and relegations because then you're suddenly changing kind of rules of football. And he said the analogy, well, we're still in the FA Cup, so does that mean we're joint winners of the FA Cup if we can't? If promotions and relegations are granted, then I guess we've won the FA Cup because we're still in it. So it's a really for Norwich. I look at Norwich in a sense. We're 6 points adrift. We are not going to survive. I can't see it if we were to play the games out. So it's kind of a not a win-win, but it's like there's not really anything to lose for Norwich. The worst case is we go down, and the best case, which is going to happen anyway, the best case is the season gets null and voided, and we remain in the division. But then you lose out on a load of money. So I honestly don't care less. The only thing I care about at this present moment is the safety of the players, and I can't see how that can be possibly guaranteed within the next 2 months. Because there's talks of tackling, facing away from the ball, and just nonsense like that. So I don't really care too much if it's played or not played. I just want to know that players kind of aren't being used as guinea pigs, really.
Yeah, I like Stuart Webber. I'm a fan of Stuart Webber. I'd love to have him at Ipswich. That'd be lovely, wouldn't it? With the FA Cup analogy doesn't really work for me because it's much easier to cancel a cup competition and just, oh, we don't have an FA Cup for this year than it is a league that has then knock-on implications for next year. Although, when did Norwich last get to the quarterfinals of the
It
FA
was like
Cup?
I think it was like 20 odd years ago. It was a long one.
Yeah. So that's another thing that you're effectively losing out on. The position I'm starting to take with all of this is that it's not fair as an argument, and I know that's not what Webber's doing, I'm just saying from a general point of view, it's not fair as an argument now doesn't help. It doesn't help. Our starting position is it's not fair. The league stopped with 9 games to go. It's not fair. Whatever happens, it's not fair. And there's now grades of it's not fair and how many people it's not fair to, etc., etc. I agree with him that if we can play it out, great. I guess I kind of agree with him that if it can't be played out, that quote, it's not fair if people go down, and it's not fair if Liverpool don't get the title or what have you.
I
Um,
suppose, I suppose it's less to do with it being fair. It's more to do with the integrity of the competition, is it not?
yeah, that's totally true. There isn't there, there's less integrity in generating a finish based on information than there is in playing it. Of course, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely there is. The one issue I have, and people disagree with me on this, that I think if you are generating a finish, then that has to have promotions and relegations. I don't subscribe to the idea that Liverpool can win the title, but teams can't be relegated.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
and that I could be wrong about that. That doesn't wash for me. I would find null and void, quote, fairer than giving Liverpool the title, but not. And this is not an
yeah.
anti-Norwich or Villa thing or whoever. I don't see how you can implement half of it one way and half of it the other. But
No, massively. I think you either do one or the other. Although Liverpool are going to win the league if it resumed, you can't say that they're champions and then relegate Norwich and Villa and whoever the other team may be. And I think if I was sat here as a Villa fan, I'd be much more annoyed about the prospect of a points per game finish or something like that, or neutral venue, because they have an actual fighting chance. I don't think Norwich do, and I think it'd be unfair to say we do. But I
But you
suppose,
do. Hypothetically, you do. That's and
yeah, I suppose.
that's the whole argument. You can, weird things. I remember Burton a couple of years ago, like, were terrible all season, won 3 and drew 1 of the last
Yeah.
5, and they didn't have a they didn't have a chance. But strange, I know the Premier League is less crazy than the Championship, and you can map it out better. But it's so tricky, isn't it? So tricky.
It's really tricky. And this links actually to a question we received on Twitter from the Unthanked Kitchen, which is a lovely pub in Norwich, actually. Can you see a situation happening where football is restarted in the Premier League or the Championship, but the players unite and refuse to play?
I don't think so, because there'll be hell to pay if that happens, particularly if the teachers go back on June the 1st, and then in a school where you can't social distance and are putting themselves at risk and are not independently wealthy young men with great immune systems that could say no, and then the footballers refuse to go back. I I think that would be ill-advised. Obviously, we want the players to be safe, but um, who has got a guarantee of safety in any scenario of going back to work at the moment?
Yeah.
Maybe a painter and decorator who's working on new houses, who can go in on their own, work on the house, and leave on their own. I don't think that would be a good look for footballers, on the basis that they do seem to have choices that other people don't. Football's not vital. The bus drivers have to go back. Sorry, I'm getting very political here, but I don't think that would be a good look for footballers. I think it wouldn't be well received if they did that. What's your view on that?
I'm kind of split because I saw Todd Cantwell tweet the other day. I can't remember what he quote tweeted, but he basically said,
We are people too.
We are people too," and I get that. And I know you work in education, so your view of the sector is a whole lot better than mine. But I've seen some head teachers basically say that if the rules are still in place, because obviously they can change up to June the 1st, but they won't be reopening the schools because they don't think it's safe. So,
And then teachers will be seen as villains across the country. And
yeah, I
and
guess.
teachers are. Sorry, Jack, to interrupt. That actually holds back the economy. Everyone wants the schools to go back because then the economy can move. Football is a different issue. If football doesn't start, we can still, kickstart the economy. I'm using all of their buzzwords, aren't I? But
Yeah, but as we said at the start of this show, these guidelines are here to keep us safe, and we have to apply these to our own personal circumstances, our personal lives, and use that as context. And if football players don't feel safe, and especially 2 months down the line, if we can get in a situation where we can play, that's fine. But let's not forget, these players have to train together, and I just don't see how it can be possible nor safe. So if the whole Norwich team said we're not playing, I'd be absolutely fine with that. If the Ipswich team said they were, I know that League One are in a different situation, but I'd be fine with that as well. I think that people have to make their own minds up. It probably wouldn't be the best look, but has football ever cared about that?
no, don't get me wrong, Jack. I'm not having it. Football players are pretty much my heroes. I love football players. I look up to them and admire them. If football in complete isolation what you say is, of course, correct. Can it be safer? No, we'll wait until it's safer. But I just think when you then plonk that into the wider context, it starts to get a little bit awkward. And I did see some people have put their heads up above the parapet, Jack, and said it's literally the safest environment you can get. They're giving you parking spots. You're going to get way more testing than everybody. You're going to get PPE. You've got a good. There's no 70-year-olds around. So it's such a moral. I'm sure people will disagree with me in the comments, and they'll agree with me in the comments. And
Yeah.
as long as they're nice
No,
about it, then that's fine. You know.
it's so tricky, isn't it? And I mean, we've seen, as you say, people having to use public transport to get back to work, especially in London, and it's packed. That's not safe. But I'm afraid, people are having to do it. Whether that's right or wrong, that's not my call to say. Let's get on to another question. I can't remember. Oh, yeah, here we go. I can't remember who sent this in, but they said, "Hi, guys. Everyone enjoys a good rustle these days, as the youth call it. What's one thing that people say about your respective clubs that winds you up a little bit or makes you do a little eye roll? And don't say nothing, Ben, as cool-headed as you are. There has to be something." I love that question.
Do you want to take it first, Jack?
No, you go.
Okay.
I'm still trying to think. You go.
The big one for me, and it was so awful, was be careful what you wish for. So
Okay.
I remember way before McCarthy left, it's saying on our podcast, we were starting to get, "Oh, be careful what you wish for," and I was like saying that is the most dumbass statement you can say because it's so broad and so
Yeah.
general, and it can apply to anything. Because you're basically saying, well, it could be worse. Well, yeah, of course it could be worse. Any situation could be worse. Any situation could get worse. And then McCarthy walks out, and then it's, we start getting the national journalism. "Oh, be careful what you wish for." And then the idea the next season, as we're plummeting into League One, that, "Oh, Ipswich fans, this is your fault. You are responsible for everything here. You kind of identified that the relationship was up, and it's your fault that he went, and it's your fault. So be careful what you wish for," was so painful, Jack.
Yeah,
So,
that's a
so
good shout. We
painful.
had that when we sacked Chris Hughton, and like the match of the day panel especially. I remember Alan Shearer being like just constantly banging on about how he's taken Norwich their highest Premier League finish in X amount of years, and it's like, yeah, but you don't have to watch that style of football each week. It's probably very similar with the Mick McCarthy stuff. Yeah, that's a great shout. I think the one for me, and maybe it's because we are just awful in cup competitions, is Ipswich fans in particular just constantly banging on about kind of how many cups you've won, and like 15-year-olds say, I'm like, you weren't even alive when that happened. And if you're taking that as how big your club is as a parallel, well, Bradford are bigger than us. They've got to a cup final in recent years. Pompey, they're bigger than Norwich as well, and bigger than Ipswich because they've won recent cup competitions. It's like
Wigan,
yeah. Are Wigan bigger than Ipswich? No, they're not. But if we're basing it off of people's argument to fit their narrative, then
Jack,
yeah,
I did a video on this for the Championship. Do you know who the biggest club in the Championship is on that?
Would it be like Sheffield Wednesday or someone?
Close. Blackburn Rovers.
Would it be?
For winning a load of titles at the turn of the century. So, big club, Schmid club, live in the moment, honours,
Yeah,
whatever.
that's one that's always
Whatever
frustrating me. And
floats your boat,
yeah, and this other one is when you draw 0-0 in the Premier League and you get like sort of 15 seconds of highlights, and then the pundits sort of skirt over it because they obviously just haven't watched the game. That's why I always quite enjoy getting relegated and being on Quest again with Colin Murray, because you actually get sort of decent insight and more than 15 seconds. That's always good. That always annoys me slightly.
And being on Match of the Day, the chance would be a fine thing, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Ollie says, who has the best hair and which requires more maintenance? Well, is there much maintenance with yours, Ben? I don't want to be sort of overseeing.
Are we not talking about? I thought we were going to talk about Ernel Hernandez or football players' hair, but no.
Well, I'm not sure. That's a good point. I was just being slightly big-headed and thinking they were talking about us there.
Well, I get asked a lot about my hair, and I have a very snappy comeback when people have a pop at my appearance on YouTube. I say, this is a football channel. There are plenty of health and beauty makeup channels you can watch. But I'm sure Ollie's question is not
No,
having
well,
a pop.
my hair's kind of
That's tremendous.
that's actually gone really well today. What I do at the moment is I wash it in the morning.
Harry Styles has probably paid somebody,
Thing.
lots of money to have it look like that
So I wash
of a
my
morning.
hair and then I put a hat on, and it sort of goes a bit Rory McIlroy around the sides where it goes a bit bushy. But I haven't had a haircut in well over 3 months now. So usually I'll have a four. What I'll do is I'll go into the barbers. I'll say four around the sides, thin it out on top because it gets really thick, and then a little bit off the fringe. That's
Mine,
my go-to.
mine is an absolute nightmare, absolute mare to have
Yeah.
hair like this. Yeah, and you have day one and day two, and you wash, and then if you don't brush it right, it looks awful. And then as soon as you have to tie it up to do anything, you know it's going to look crap for the next couple of days. But Jack, I'm not tall, I'm not particularly handsome,
Oh, you are.
I'm
You
not
are.
particularly athletic. I'm nothing without it. It has to stay.
Oh dear. Who has the best? Well, in terms of not, I really like Todd Cantwell's hair actually. He
Yeah.
went through that awful phase where he cut it all off, and then he was like, "Actually, this is a terrible idea," and then had to grow it out. And I'm sure you went through that stage whenever you grew yours out, and that stage where it's like, well, basically mine, where
Neither
it's just
nor.
horrible and nothing, and then you
I,
get to a stage where it's either yours or Todd's, and it looks decent.
I don't want to be one of those guys, oh, you never played the game, so you can't talk about football. But if you've never had hair over 1 centimeter long, which a lot of males watching this probably haven't, then you don't know the half of it, honestly. You just don't know. But
Okay.
we did have Trevor Chalobah on loan from
Oh yeah.
Chelsea with the half and half,
Mm.
which the Millwall fans, you've got bird shit in your hair, loved. So.
Very good, very good. From one extreme of question to the other, Jules, hello, Ben and Jack. Following
Hi,
the
Jules.
lifting of restrictions, specifically allowing fans to attend sporting events, so whenever this happens, how many clubs would you predict are going to fold? My guess is that there will only be three pro leagues and no fans allowed until August 2022 at the earliest. That seems a long way away, doesn't it? I
It
mean, I
does.
can see where he's coming from, though.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're then into the realms of really to have mass gatherings of, yeah, and even a League One game with a few thousand people. The way you're crammed in,
Mm,
you're in vaccine territory. Then
yeah.
we see all sorts of estimates. January next, it could be an entire season behind closed doors, couldn't it? So
Yeah, that would probably be easier to take, knowing that you're going into a season that it will be behind closed doors. One, because it's fair for everyone, because the circumstance and the atmosphere will be the same for everyone throughout the whole season. And as fans, I think once you know something is going to be happening for a while, you can kind of adjust slightly. But the thought for me right now of football returning behind closed doors is just the worst. I would probably watch the Norwich games, but my lack of care would be off the charts. So I honestly wouldn't care for it.
it's odd, isn't it? You'd feel like they'd almost have to do something to the stadiums to. I
Mm,
mean, I'm sure you've been to reserve games and things of that nature. Being a nerd, I like it because I like hearing what the players and the instructions that they're giving to each other, and sitting close to the managers, and you can have a real good earwig in and try and learn a bit from a layman's point of view. But you start to get into this Mönchengladbach and the cardboard cutouts and the. I'm sure as a Norwich fan, you'll remember Mark Robbins scoring a hat trick in front of the
yeah,
mural in front of the Arsenal North Bank at Highbury. But yeah, the stadiums are just going to be. It'd almost be a case of putting. Aston Villa had an amazing drape at a playoff game I saw there. It's like put the drapes down and cover those empty seats up and things like that. And but then level playing field. Does that distract the players? Burr, burr, burr. I'm sure we're still going to have the advertising boards, Jack, if it's on
Yeah.
TV, though, aren't we?
That what you just said there shows how different we are. When I go to reserve games and there's hardly anyone there and you can hear what they're saying, I just listen out for the rude words they're saying and giggle.
Suarez on that game apparently was an absolute crap house. It was an international game or a Barcelona game behind closed doors, and
Yeah, yeah.
apparently I forget I think he was playing against someone significantly worse than him as well, but still just yapping in their ear the absolute whole game. So no, I enjoy that side of it as well.
Yeah, I love playing cricket, but I almost enjoy watching village cricket more because the sledging.
Is it
You get
still
kind of
there
like,
at village
you get
cricket?
sort
Is
of
it?
like 40-year-old sort of alcoholics behind the stumps, like just ripping into like 13-year-olds, and it's like this is amazing. This is amazing. Like someone has paid their £10 subs, drove from Yarmouth to Kings Lynn or something to just bully a 14-year-old. I was like, this is excellent. This is amazing.
Oh dear.
That's what I enjoy anyway. This is a good question actually. I'm sure you'll like this. Run, cycle, cake. That sounds like a nice little trio. That said, which Bundesliga club will you be following over the next few weeks?
Oh Christ! I'm gonna try and tune in. I have procured a password for Saturday
Brilliant.
to watch BT, and I'm sure they're astronomical viewing figures that they're gonna get.
Yes, yeah.
I've got absolutely no idea. Run, cycle, cake, the triathlon that I'd probably be better at.
I saw that the Bundesliga, the official like Twitter account was tweeting out for every Premier League club, like a club that's sort of linked, whether that's
okay.
So Schalke was Norwich because we signed, or Pookie was linked there, sort of thing. So is there any like players you've signed?
I'm sure some of the older fans will, from the European days, will have places they went and things like that. I think I'm just going to be watching from like you were saying, how is this going to be behind closed doors? Are we going to be as we expected? Oh God, at least some football. Obviously it's entertainment. You want to see the stars, don't you? So the big clubs, they're big clubs for a reason, and they draw more money and bigger audience for that reason. But are stars when there's no crowd? It's
they're just people running about a football pitch.
But then again, have you been watching the basketball thing with Michael Jordan? Even when
I haven't actually. No,
you love that, Jack. Yeah.
That. Yeah.
Even when they show they've got clips of them training and stuff. You do still think, oh Christ, it's Superman. So
really?
maybe behind closed doors won't matter for the real superstars.
I'm going to follow Paderborn. I think they're very much in a relegation.
From watching your channel, you've done the pre-seasons there. You must have been to some of these places, mustn't you?
We didn't go to Paderborn. We went to it was a Bundesliga 2 club. Oh my goodness, I've forgotten what they're called now. No, it wasn't Paderborn. The only reason is they're similar kind of size to Norwich, and Dennis Trebeni leads the line for them now.
The legend, icon,
the icon himself, and he scored against Bayern Munich actually.
Against Munich, Jesus.
Yeah, lovely goal, lovely goal.
Just quickly, Jack, for everyone screaming at the radio, yes, Ipswich does have a link to Germany because our wonderful manager does like to remind us how successful he was in his playing career every now and then. So,
of course,
but it'd be a bit boring to go down that route, wouldn't
it? One question from Alex Batt. Thoughts on Peterborough United as a club and any particular memories of playing them? Have you listened to Darren McAntony's podcast?
I haven't. No, I follow him on Twitter. Is he good?
I listened to the opening 10 minutes and I didn't have to switch it off. I switched it off just because he's not a natural speaker, I don't think. No. He was just going over the same things over and over again. But I'm sure if you're a posh fan, it's nice to have your director or whatever, chairman, communicating in a.
I think we'll see more of that, particularly down in the lower leagues. Yeah, look, obviously there's the horrible 7-1 on Sky TV under Paul Jewell, and Tommy Smith got just a complete humiliation, and Lee Tomlin destroyed us. So there's that memory. I actually quite like Peterborough as a club,
Yeah.
on the basis of this model of, right, the model of the club is we can attract good up and coming strikers on the basis we're going to play really open and create a
Mm.
ton of chances, and we will let Jack Marriott, Assombalonga. God, there's been tons of them, haven't they?
Yeah.
And they've got, a couple of
White
Ivan
Gale. I
Toney and Dembele. It was Dwight Gale Peterborough as well, was he?
think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. So I like that. I like that model. I've disagreed with Joe on our podcast about it. He thinks it's a little bit overplayed, but I like the romance of
Yeah. Yeah.
the idea of, right, I'm a striker. I want to go and play for Peterborough because I want to be the next Jack Marriott or Dwight Gale or
Yeah.
Assombalonga, and I'm sure Ivan Toney will, be the next one off the production line, and then someone else would go in. So I like that model. I don't like the memories of the 7-1, but and I do remember Peterborough being incredible on one of the Champ Manager games and having
Okay.
Gareth Jellyman at left wing back and Mark Tyler in goal, and God, there was an Icelandic midfielder, and you literally didn't even have to sign anyone. You just rocketed up the leagues. It was great.
I always kind of see Peterborough as a slightly smaller scale Brentford in the way that they operate. Maybe it's to do with that kind of strikers and then selling them on for bigger money. I've always enjoyed going to Peterborough Stadium. When I think we spoke a few weeks ago about this, kind of that first time, like as a teenager, when you can go
Terraces.
off on the train, and we always, because Peterborough is quite easy to get to from Norwich, so we used to get the train from Yarmouth to Norwich, Norwich to Peterborough, and just go and watch. If there was like no Norwich game, just go and watch Peterborough on the stand and terrace, because you don't see many of them in sort of upper flight football games now. So yeah, I've always enjoyed Peterborough.
Well,
There
I'd
was a
say
lovely FA Cup game we had there. God, it must have been 2013 when we won 3-0, I think, and we just played some really nice football. And it's always nice playing when you're a club who hasn't played in front of standing terraces for a little while, to go and stand on the terrace and watch your own club. That's great. That's really
and I
great.
think, Jack, all you want as a fan is to know what the model is. And if I'm a Peterborough
Yeah,
fan, I know, oh, okay, no, the club is going to be secure whilst there's another Dembele or Tony or Schmodix. We were linked with Schmodix as well, and then he bloody
yeah.
destroyed us for. Well, I'm sure they'll sign him, but he's on loan from Bristol City. But yeah, I like Peterborough.
Massively. Yeah, I'm going to stop the questions there. We had loads. We're going to do a separate Twitter questions, YouTube questions type video, maybe later this week, actually. So if you have got any questions and you're watching this, just put them in the comments section of our YouTube videos. Okay, so how do we see the next sort of few weeks playing out then?
Well, I think League One and League Two are going to get canned, and
Okay.
then if we get the points per game thing happen there, at least that then sets a precedent. Like we've said numerous times on this show already, someone making a decision for others to follow. I think the players will go back on Monday. I think the Premier League players will do that. I think then it's just an eye on the horrible numbers in the rest of the
Yeah.
world, isn't it? Does people, the roads getting busier out there? Does people going back to work? Is that horrible
Yeah.
rumbling infections and death rate going up? And we need something soon, though, Jack. Particularly, I must say the thing about the contracts is good that
Yeah.
you can give an extension now. Have you
But
got
the
any
players
loan?
don't have to accept it, do they?
As I understand, it's just an option. You can, if a player
Yeah.
is done on June the 30th, you can extend for a month. Obviously, yeah, there's negotiation. Have you got any loan players at Norwich?
Yeah, we've got a few. We've got Duda, who was very highly rated and hasn't really done much. There's a few others. The funny thing is, Ben, is like it's been so long without football. I probably couldn't name you what starting 11 we've.
Oh,
So
I could remember the bloody league table, and
yeah,
I can't tell you who's where. But
yeah,
the loan thing now, so there's some steps forward, but it's all just linked into that wider
yeah,
thing of is the pandemic stabilizing and staying down, and are we keeping it down with the changes that are made? And I think if we keep it down, then yeah, June the 12th, June the 18th, whenever. I think
Yeah.
they're gonna try and go for it. Although I did see a very foreboding tweet. I think it's Mike Keegan. He's the male, I think, saying that at the start of all of this, he said that the Premier League would basically go through the motions, do everything, quote, do everything they could, and it would all be cancelled because it would be
Yeah.
impossible. So
Yeah.
I hope he's not right, but that's still the scenario.
No.
If in 3 weeks' time those horrible numbers are creeping back up, then no, there's not going to be
Yeah.
any football. But and for the good of humanity, we need those numbers to come down, not just football.
Massively. No, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how the Bundesliga. I know they're slightly further ahead in terms of where we are, but one, how the games go ahead and how it looks, and is it like watching football as we used to, and then also the sort of the coming weeks, has there been confirmed cases at clubs, things like that. I mean, we saw this week, didn't we? Brighton with
3 players,
it,
yeah.
yeah, 3 cases. So,
But Jack, I think for a lot of people, what will really help is seeing some Bundesliga this weekend, and if we come out of that weekend and people are okay,
yeah,
and there's not all
well,
of a
that's the thing, isn't
sudden,
it?
oh, I actually saw a tackle, and
Yeah,
and because I get the comments every day, Jack, on oh, how can you play football? And I try and explain over and again. They'll be tested,
yeah,
that we know that they don't have the virus. You, the whole social distancing thing is if you don't know, but then
yeah,
there's the asymptomatic thing. So I think getting through the first weekend of Bundesliga and there not being, oh, this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy will hopefully put a lot of people, because then people like me will then argue back. That's how. There you go. Look,
yeah. Well,
they
you've
did
got
it.
evidence then, haven't you? Like
Yeah, exactly.
that's all you need. But being the pessimist in this conversation slightly, it could go the other way. You could get confirmed cases, and then it's like, well, the people who didn't want it to go ahead, they have got
Oh,
evidence. So,
absolutely. Well, and Jack, they'll be right. Do you
well,
know?
yeah,
Like you say, evidence is. Um, I know everybody likes to think that they're right in debates or whatever, but evidence wins wins
yeah.
debates
You
and
can't
wins
argue.
arguments. So
Definitely. Anyway, I think we'll call it a day for now. Thank you again for watching, one and all. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comment sections, and we'll be sure to answer them in the next episode of this, because we've already got quite a few to rattle through off of Twitter. Ben, have a good week, mate, and I'll see you again soon. And everyone watching, stay safe, be wise, and what is it? Stay alert. That's what they're saying, isn't it?
stay alert. Do
Stay
it.
alert, people. See you later.